the amazing Allison O'Toole, Dan Price, Andre Owen, Fred Kennedy, Chip Zdarsky.
Chip, thanks for coming.
What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews, and tonight I'm joined by Dave Swartz. Once again, and this time, though it's been a while, we are going to be talking about a follow-up to their previous campaign, this one being Confederate Monster, numbers 1 through 5, which is fantastic. Dave, as always, just like we did last time, for the folks at home who are either watching live with us now or perhaps sometime in the future, for the folks who've never seen your face, never heard your name, who is Dave Swartz?
Sure. So I am an indie comic book creator, artist, writer, letterer, pretty much everything. And actually for this book, Confederate Monster, I do everything. So this story is something I've been working on for many years. I'm just now sort of getting to the end of this first arc. But basically it's Frankenstein meets the Civil War. So in the story, we touch on and introduce a lot of the familiar Frankenstein characters and the tropes of the story. However, we follow Igor as the main character, and it's set 8 years into the future, well after the monster's been reanimated. And Igor is sort of just living a very kind of humble life in America until the Confederacy finds out about his secret past, and they kidnap him and force him to reanimate their dead army.
Love it. Fantastic elevator pitch. Very refined. I appreciate that, but also very detailed. I know. Yeah, I was gonna say, now readers know what they're gonna get into. So I now have the perfect clip for TikTok, because that's the book. The last time we spoke, it was just for number 1. And given the politically divisive nature of the Confederacy within the states itself, but of course at large in the world, and the current political situation going on, I thought that was kind of fitting, to be honest. A little funny, a little, but also, you know what? Hey, we got to have something to be able to laugh at and enjoy. So here is Confederate Monster. As people can see, we've got it up on the screen. We have 13 days to go, so just shy of 2 weeks left for people to back it. You have currently 88 backers, fantastic. And of the Canadian dollar point goal of $4,297, which I'm guessing is $3,500 US?
3,000 actually.
Woof. Okay, the American dollar is doing a lot better, or the Canadian dollar is doing a lot worse. Either way. Of your goal in Canadian, you've surpassed it by $400, so you're probably at 31 or 3,200.
32. Yeah.
So, right off the bat, Dave, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
When it comes to making the books, like you said, you do it all.
Mm-hmm.
How has the process changed for you since making the first one, now that you're on the 5th one? What have you learned, and feel free, go for it. What's changed?
Sure. So when I first started the book, it started out as my COVID project, and I did like the first 3 issues during 2020, and so I honestly was putting a lot more time, effort, and everything into the book. Nowadays, I am relegated to just 1 day a week working on it, and mainly because I'm a artist professionally, so I have to sort of devote the majority of my schedule to cranking out projects for other creators. But I keep a day every week for my own work,
Nice.
whether it is Confederate Monster or some other project I've got going on. And so the process is a little slower. I have to, be very diligent about working on it on that day, because if I don't, then an entire week goes by and I have nothing done on it. And this current issue is very heavy with the detail. There's a lot of battle scenes, lots of undead Confederate monsters running around. So I have to put a lot more effort and time and energy into the pages, more so than some of the previous issues that I've done. And my style is arguably a little more simplified than most. I don't tend to over render things. Um, but I think for this book in particular, it is a horror story. So I wanted to make sure that it had a certain level of visual texture and grit to it. So I do add, I would say, a little extra level of, rendering, line work, coloring, that kind of thing, just to make it pop a little bit more.
Right on. And I mean, I have so many questions now. One, I love the fact that you're setting a day aside, and I'm hoping, Dave, that it is not chewing into time that you would otherwise use to relax, but I appreciate it probably is because that's the nature of the game.
Yeah.
What is what does that day look like for you, and how does it differ from sort of work, if you will?
Sure. I mean, first of all, it's a great day, because I
Yeah.
actually get to work on something that is, very near and dear to my heart. But you know, a lot of the stories that I work on have deadlines. They have a lot of need and necessity, that the creators demand.
Mhm.
So with this book, though, I'm the one making all the decisions. So if I need to change something because I'm so inspired, I can do so without a lot of extra headache.
Right on. Yeah.
I also feel as though when I'm doing Confederate Monster, I do have almost this sense of liberation because if I get into the lettering stage and the dialogue's just not fitting the way that I want, or if I just trimmed it down a little bit, then maybe it would fit a little bit better. Then I can
Hmm.
do that on the fly, and I don't have to go through an entire committee's worth of people, to make sure that those changes get made. And honestly, sometimes as a creator, like I know what it's like. So when I work with other creators, it can be challenging for me to ask for an edit because I'm like, oh man, they're gonna hate me because like they don't want to have to do that edit, But it is important sometimes, when you want to improve the book and make it the best that it can be. So in that regard, I feel like it makes me feel a little more liberated as a creator to be able to work on a project that's solely my own.
Well said. I like that, and I appreciate one like I the previous show I did earlier tonight, my sketchy goodness, with a fellow comic creator, and it's someone who on that show we often talk about the process and how to do everything. I appreciate from you that because you do this project solo, you then when you're doing your sort of the 9 to 5 work, very conscientious of every other creator's time, the effort that it takes, because unlike some people who may not be as creatively inclined but are still involved in the process, who might not get it, you do. Um, I think it's appreciated. Um, and I guess what I wanted to ask next to keep it on the book, because of course Confederate Monster number 5 is what we're talking about. Um, now that you're doing it on your own, that you've set that day for yourself, um, I believe I asked you this in our last one, but how does sort of the 9 to 5 work, the day job, um, how has that impacted your process for making this book over the past 5 issues now? Like, when it comes to the actual work, and sort of setting, I guess, your schedules, your limits, um,
Mm.
all that kind of stuff. How's that interplayed for you?
Sure. I think in the beginning it was a little challenging. There was a bit of a hiatus on Confederate Monster because I was trying to, rebalance some things between, my work life and my home life, but then also trying to work in, this personal project. Because as we all know, 9 to 5 jobs, and home life can take up a lot of your time. So it's difficult to find time to do personal projects. But my wife was very adamant that
Ooh.
I find, yeah.
Ooh.
Like I said, this book is really getting into a lot more detailed drawings and compositions and things like that. And in this regard, a bit more gruesome than what we've
Yeah.
seen thus far. But I think that in being a pencil, so to speak, for hire for these other projects, I feel like I in the beginning it was a little challenging, but
Mhm.
now I've been doing it for so long that I have been able to create a really solid process for myself. Because I also am a part-time professor at a college here in Detroit, in Michigan, where I live, and so I teach 2 classes. I'm in class probably 4 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, and it's in the middle of my day. So I basically I get up at 7 a.m. I get my breakfast in. I spend a little time with my little kitty, and then I get to work typically between 8:30, and then I work until lunch. I have lunch, and then I have maybe a little bit of time, maybe like an hour, hour and a half after lunch before I have to then pack up all my stuff, go to school, teach a class, come home, make dinner immediately, and then I get to relax a little bit. Maybe I get like 2 hours of downtime at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
and try and have a life.
Yeah, yeah, and I try my best to balance that, or at least to emulate that schedule, for most of the days of the week. And then, Fridays and Saturdays, Fridays I get to just sort of catch up on a lot of the stuff that maybe I didn't get done Monday through Thursday.
Right on.
So like for instance, I typically have like a project that I'm working on that's either pencils and inks, or pencils, inks, and colors. But
Mm.
then sometimes I'll have a project that I take on that's just coloring. And so if it's just like a coloring project, I can actually do some of the flatting for those pages while I'm in my class. So, I kind of like double dip
Nice.
a little bit in that regard, which it's funny because the college actually encourages me to do that.
What?
Yeah, well,
Really?
it's funny because I asked about it once, and their response was, it is a good way to encourage your students to see the professional at work. So
Oh
if
yeah.
you're a
Okay.
student, you're taking a class by a working professional, right? And so to show them your work and to use your work as examples of why you should do what I'm telling you to do, because this is what happens if you listen to my instructions, you know,
Yep.
it makes for a better connection point, I feel, with students.
Right
Um,
on.
yeah. So it is a lot. The schedule is pretty tight. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room, but I feel as though I've really developed a lot of my process over these last several years to the point where not only can I get a lot done, but I can still balance work and my downtime pretty effectively.
Amazing. Well, that is fantastic. Kudos to you for figuring that out. And also that work allows you to work while you're working.
Yeah,
But I think they're
fun.
right. Because, yeah, it speaks to your professional capacity, um, I guess the legitimacy of what you're teaching.
Right?
Plus, I mean, it gives your students really cool examples to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, for the book itself, I appreciate this campaign is for books 1 through 5. So I don't want to like give too many spoilers, but I also don't want to like not give folks who haven't been there yet some idea of what's going on. So you gave a fantastic sort of pitch about what this is in concept. But I am curious about sort of the story that you've created for Igor being pulled into the Confederacy. Specifically around like Igor's character and then your own world that you've built for him. So can you give maybe a synopsis of, I'll say maybe issue one, and then look sort of a general overview of what people can expect, story element wise from the arc.
Sure. So there's some things about issue one that I don't really want to talk about because I just feel like they're really good punchy moments.
Then
Um,
leave that out.
yeah, but like you said, Igor is the main player. I when I first started it out, I wanted to sort of shift the point of view of the story from a character that we're typically familiar with when it comes to Frankenstein, like telling it from Victor's point of view or telling it from the monster's point of view. So again, I wanted to shift point of view. I also wanted to play with again the timeline, and that's sort of where I landed on the Civil War because it was a period of our history that I don't feel we use a lot within our cultural stories for I think understandable reasons. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily the most glorified period of our history, but I feel as though there is a lot of fodder for interesting storytelling, especially pulling characters that are real historical characters and using them as the villains that they really were. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so I I dove into it from that perspective. The story so far, we're following Igor as he's making his way through this very um, un, unseen and unwilling task. So he has to do it. I don't necessarily want to get into exactly why he has to do it, but he has to do it, and he has no in his mind he has no other choice. And so we see him kind of grappling with these decisions that he's making because it's well established in issue one that he is adamantly against the Confederacy and what they are propped up by.
Hmm.
And so he clearly is in the camp of I want to get out of here. I don't know when this war is going to end, kind of thing. But his wife is like, no, we're going to stay here. This is where I grew up, kind of stuff. But anyway, so we fold in Victor because Victor is part of this whole plot from the Confederacy to raise the dead. But Victor, as we meet him in issue two, he is absolutely insane. He's basically been in an insane asylum for 8 years. So he's just when we first meet him, he's biting the heads off of rats, and he's completely
Mm.
emaciated. He's got this long, you know, mane of hair and beard, and he's just talking in weird riddles. Which was super fun to write that dialogue.
I bet.
Well, it's fun because it was, my thought was he's speaking in rhyme and riddle, but if you really read the riddle, like he's telling you like stuff. So I thought that was fun. But again, we fold in Victor, we fold in the monster, the original monster, who is now more of like a cowboy character. You can see him there riding on top of that stagecoach. Yeah.
Looking
Um,
very, very snazzy.
yeah. So, again, it's been 8 years for him, to kind of develop his own personality and to make his way through the world. And, so we've caught up with all the classic characters. We are at a point where the story is starting to really ratchet up to its ultimate conflict. Obviously, the army from the cover of issue 5 is clearly been risen. So now it's a matter of watching as this army of undead Confederates barrel their way through the countryside towards the White House to essentially, take over and win the war. So that's, I think, the most exciting part about issue 5 for me is that we're finally at a point where we can start to really ratchet up the action and the conflict, and get to something that's just a little bit more, I can sink my teeth into this type of stuff.
Right on. Now, one thing I'm super curious about. So, just for the folks out there, um, what is it specifically that you teach?
Well, right now, I started out teaching what we call 2D design and principles, which is basically like basic design. So like composition, color theory, shape theory, a lot of different stuff like that.
Important stuff too, the
Yeah,
basics.
I mean, I teach in the foundations department, so it's all foundational prerequisite classes that everybody in the entire college has to take. So I used to teach that. Now I teach in the drawing department for the foundations department, and I basically teach what I do every day, which is just figure drawing. So
Nice.
I work with nude models, and they come in every session, and we do specific studies. Like this week, we literally just finished up our study of the skeletal system, and next week we're going to dive into anatomy, and so superficial anatomy, and diving into all of that, and doing individual little studies every day, and yeah, it's like I said, it's literally what I do every day, just drawing dynamic, interesting people. So
So, okay, that couldn't have been better timing for my part. So, what I want to ask about is, given what you teach, given the dynamics that we often find in comics, right? Because comics, in order to catch people's eye, they really want to do these big dynamic shots, right? You hear a lot of artists be like, "Oh, this double spread page was awesome because I got to draw all these cool fights and blah 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 blah." But a lot of that basically falls down to dynamic posture, dynamic poses, and getting it to feel like motion, right?
yep,
Like that's the whole idea.
yep.
Now, I was looking at the cover, so I'm going to zoom up to the cover again real quick. Sorry for anyone who just got vertigo.
Yeah.
Um, you have on this cover a horse.
Mhm.
You got a bunch of people and I don't even know if I would call it. They're Frankenstein's
Yeah, it's a weird
monster.
thing. Everyone,
Yeah,
yeah, everyone calls them zombies, but I just call them undead soldiers. So
I'm stealing your word then. So we got all these undead soldiers, and we got this undead horse.
mhm.
Now, in comics, time and time again, I will hear that comic creators, artists specifically, do not like drawing horses because the anatomy's weird, and if you're not really good at it, it doesn't look like a horse.
Yeah,
And now we've got this wonderful drawing of this woman who's been absolutely butchered. Um, so what I wanted to ask, all of that leading into, when it comes to the anatomy and the weird ways that you're contorting it, um, what kind of extra information did you need, especially because you're showing people with chunks of skin and muscle flayed open, that horse had half of its like the teeth and bone exposed. So you're adding on extra levels of necessary detail when it comes to that kind of stuff.
mhm.
Um, so being conscious of the art of this, uh, did you need to sort of brush up on any particular set of knowledge or skills? Are you sort of doing it by the seat of your pants? Like what goes into making that look correct?
Sure. I mean, I would like to say that I feel like most of the time I'm flying by the seat of my pants, but
Fair.
I do use reference quite often. I will say I have gotten to a point where if it's a regular type thing, like it's just a regular person, um, I can pretty much draw that from my memory, my head. I don't necessarily need reference. But when it comes to something like this, or like you said, the aforementioned horse, um, you know, gotta use reference for things like that because it's something I just don't draw every day. So I want to make sure that what the lines that I'm laying down look right.
Mm.
And so, I use a lot of reference for the horse stuff. Thank God for the internet. Because if I did this in a pre-internet age, I'm not just sure what I would do. I'd probably have a ton of books. But yeah, I use a ton of reference for all that stuff. Now, when it comes to this type of stuff, the gory stuff, the anatomy things, for the most part, I feel like I've trained myself to be pretty good at visualization.
Right on.
So, if I look at an image of something like an anatomical diagram, I can basically look at that, absorb the visual information. And if I need to, in this case, like turn it, twist it, contort it, I can kind of do that in my head. And I don't necessarily need an exact, photograph of the, foot at that same angle or the thigh at that same, like I can just sort of visualize it. Uh, However, I will say one stipulation to that, especially with this scene, is I wanted to be a bit more accurate when it came to proper methods of dissection. So
Oh, okay.
instead of just like I'm going to cut right here, I actually looked up what are the proper cuts for how to dissect the foot, how to dissect the legs, how to
Oh.
dissect everything, so that it looks more anatomically correct.
So like a doctor or a coroner might have done that.
Right, exactly. Because not
Huh.
only does it add authenticity to the artwork, but I feel like it's just ultimately going to look more visually interesting that way. It makes it feel more real. One of the things I say a lot in my drawing class to my students is the more you can add curves and any kind of like twists
Mm.
to things, it just naturally makes it look more visually interesting versus straight lines. Straight lines kind of kill a composition. So it's funny for me because uh, my style is very linear. I hardly ever do a very nice, elegant curved line, unless it's like smoke or something like that. But there's a curvature to like in the thigh. There's a curvature
Hmm.
to every part of the
Well,
human body.
even like just the arm here, the musculature, because of
Yep.
my weight, the fatness, the way it all works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing, and I want to give you kudos on this drawing too. And again, coming from like someone who's not into horror, I appreciate this a lot because from a drawing standpoint, not only have you like done the research to dissect this being, this unfortunate person, um, but you've got their forearms reversed. You've got the right thigh and it's sort of sat on its side. The left thigh again, it's opened and rotated a bit. Like the mechanics of all of that is incredible.
Thank you.
Uh, no problem. Like I imagine when you drew this, and maybe I'm wrong, but I imagine when you drew this, you must have if it was all done digitally, you must have rotated your artboard so that you could get in there and draw things correctly.
Hmm.
Because I imagine to try and draw that and figure out the physics and the mechanics of it all would have been a little daunting to try and draw it just straight. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, like it's fascinating. And I highly appreciate the attention to detail that you're getting into, um, especially for. Can you see my mouse?
Hmm. Yep.
Okay, especially for that particular cut,
Yep.
because then it's just fascinating that that's the way that that would be done.
Hmm.
Um, Now we're about halfway through, so I want to get into the tiers, the options for people coming back, and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But before we jump into that, um, was there anything that issue 5 here taught you that was new to your skill set or just the way that you view making comics?
Um, I would say I think with issue 5, I so far because I'm still in production on it. I would say so far I've been exploring different ways of adding more depth into the panels.
Okay.
Like one of the things that I've been critiquing about my own work over the last little while here is, I tend to I don't pull the camera out enough. And I've
Oh.
been starting to work on that, where instead of, if you look at a page, every panel being a very kind of medium sized shot where, you're getting waist up or shoulder up, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, because sometimes in comics, let's be honest, there's a lot of talking head scenes. But, I'm really looking critically at the scenes that I feel like, I could pull the camera back a bit and show a bit more of a wide shot, that not only encapsulates more of the environment, but also adds levels of depth in that environment. Things that are close to camera, things that are in the middle ground, and then things that are far, far into the background.
Right
Um,
on.
but then, one of the other tricks I've been working on using more often is something that I learned from looking at Sean Gordon Murphy's work.
Oh, right
He
on.
he he's a really really good at creating a visual like pathway in the way in which he puts together his panels, especially the big wide cityscapes or landscapes or whatever it may be. He's really good at figuring out how to draw like a visual pathway from the front bottom section of the illustration to just sort of like move you through and in and just push the depth of the actual scene. Yeah, like something like that where like you have this beautiful foreground element with just the front end of the 89 Batmobile there on the left hand side.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice lead in element that sort of pushes your eye right to that area right in between those other two Batmobiles, that then pushes you up the stairs, that then puts you up on the balcony, which then pushes your eye up into that upper skylight. So again, it's like you have all these different levels of depth, but not only is the depth there, he's utilizing the different elements of the composition to push your eye where he wants you to go. And that's like high level stuff right there.
Yeah.
You got to be drawn for a long time to really master it and use properly. So I'm getting there. I'm still, I did a page for issue 5. That's a big battle scene. Lots of undead Confederate monsters just rampaging. And when I first drew it, it was coming, the composition was coming right at you,
Mm-hmm.
like everybody was just sort of charging right at you. I had my main villain, the undead General Stonewall Jackson on his horse, right dead center in the middle. And I was looking at it one day and because it was all penciled. I mean, I literally had it all penciled. And I was looking at it going, nope, this is just
Oh.
not good enough. It's just not. And so I scrapped it, and I was looking on my phone, just trying to find some inspiration. I found a scene out of a Black Panther comic. I honestly do not know who drew it or what book it was, but it just changed my perspective of how I could do like a big battle kind of scene. So
Very
I,
cool.
I just sort of shifted my point of view a little bit. I added a little bit more depth. I added a little bit of a tilt forward to it, so that things felt like there's a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And the page just like it's night and day. I mean, it's so much better. Um, not to mention that it took me probably twice as long to do that, but I got a better product out of it.
Yeah, and I mean that will absolutely like one thing that 'cause I've started dabbling in writing and I've gotten myself into an anthology, which is really cool. But
Mhm.
one thing that I've now done now that I've sort of edited my own work and reread it, um, is when I'm rereading my own work, if I think it's boring, there's no way in hell anyone else who reads this is gonna like it. And like for you coming to that scene, if you're like, this just ain't it,
Yep.
then that was the correct choice, even though it took you twice as long.
Yep.
But I will say it might have taken you twice as long, but you've used new skills, you've learned new perspective. So the next time you go to do it, probably won't take you as long.
That's
Um,
true.
but that is fantastic, Dave. And what I appreciate so much about that is Again, as an educator, it seems just perfect. Um, you're willing to recognize when you're wrong and to learn and to draw on sources.
Mhm.
Um, so if any of your students happen to be watching this, whether trying to get extra credit or just be like, what's my teacher doing anyway? Um, do that by all means. When you figure out when something doesn't feel right, address it, adjust, learn, adapt, and grow for it.
Yep.
Because when people get to pick up issue 5 and see the now new battle scene, they will be, I'm sure, extremely stunned. And if you've done everything the way you want, their eye will be led very well. Um,
Oh,
that being said, people getting the book, kind of an important thing. I'm going to throw this back up here. So, again, the book is already fully funded, which is fantastic. However, getting more people to get the book is always better.
oh yeah.
Um, so, one thing I like to ask that you've already sort of mentioned is the book is not yet done. Just just the way it goes with Kickstarter, right? That's why we're getting the funding to be able to do the publishing and the printing and all of that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so currently, because it sounds like you've got chunks of it done at least,
Oh yeah.
how complete would you say the book is from 0% to 100%?
Right now, I would say it's probably around 40% complete. It's not quite halfway yet. I, one of the other reasons why I wanted to do a Kickstarter now instead of later, is because, like I said, I can only really do 1 day a week right now. But if we were to, make a little bit extra with the campaign, then I might be able to take a couple of days extra off in order to be able to work on it and get it done even faster. So that's kind of part my thought, is that if we can continue to kind of push the campaigns a little bit, then maybe I might even be able to take a little bit of time for the book, so that it can actually sort of have a little bit more of my attention. And again, with that, I wanted to be able to show people that, I am, in the process of working on it. So if, maybe we decide that we want to, change something up, or if because one of the thoughts that I had, and I don't know if I'm going to do it for this campaign, but I'll probably do it for the last issue. I want to do a draw in tier, so you can get drawn in,
Oh, I
as a
love that. Yeah.
yeah, I did one for the first campaign that I ran on Indiegogo, and I felt bad because I sold a couple of them, but then in my I don't know what I was thinking, but it just sort of dawned on me that, like, oh crap, like I'm not going to be able to draw anybody until like issue 5, because I don't have any of these undead soldiers part of the story until they come in issue 5. So that's another reason why I'm so eager to get into 5. It's because I'm finally going to be able to fulfill some like really long waited tiers, or rewards
Right
for
on.
people. But I want to add more. I think it'd be really cool to have maybe an entire 2-page spread full of the backers as monsters.
Oh,
Um,
that'd be sick. Yeah.
yeah, I had a guy, for the first round of the draw in tier. He was very specific, and I can't wait to do this for him because I think it's so cool. Um, he included, because I didn't know about this, even though I did some fairly extensive research on the Civil War. Um, there was and I'm probably going to get some of the facts wrong, but from what I understand, he told me that um, there was like a soldier exchange type program between Russia and America during the Civil War, and there was like Russian soldiers that came over to like study our warfare and to like basically you know collaborate. And the same was done with our guys. They went over to Russia and they studied their warfare, and they, sort of collaborated on how they do things and how they might be improved by other techniques. So there was this like Russian soldier who was part of the Civil War, and they wore this like tall Russian hat that you're kind of used to seeing, and it had this skull and crossbones on it. And I was like, dude, like just visually alone, like that looks
That's
so
cool.
cool. Yeah. So I was like, oh man, I want to put that guy in there so bad. So I'm thinking I'm gonna try to find a spot in issue 5, but it might have to get pushed to issue 6 just because, man, I don't know. Like I feel like something that cool needs to kind of come in right at the end. But I don't
Right
know. We'll
on,
see.
yeah.
We'll see.
I mean, yeah, that is such a that stands out, right? Especially
Right.
like for the time period what everyone else would have been wearing. Yeah, like that's got to get shown off a little bit. And it's super cool for that person to have been like, "Hey, I want this," and like it just be a cool idea. Like,
Right. Right.
go for it,
Love it.
right?
Love it.
But yes, so people getting the book. So when they click this button, it'll take them to a set of tiers, rewards.
Mhm.
Can you kindly, Dave, walk us through these rewards, and I will gladly bring it up on screen,
Sure.
just so people know what they're getting.
Sure. So, my featured bundle there is a collection of a couple of different things. So you get a physical and digital copy of issue 5, as well as a coaster, a sticker, and
Ooh,
a 6x9 art print done by me. That art print was a previously unused cover that when I put the cover dressing on it, I just didn't really like it all that much.
hmm,
So I felt like, you know what? I think this could be a better poster than a cover. So I decided to include it in the feature bundle. Um,
sick.
yeah. And then after that, you get just a digital copy. That's a pretty popular option, especially for those overseas. I've been finding that a lot more of the international fans are sort of opting more for the digital option because of shipping and other such things. So
Yep.
yeah, the digital is always a good option. Um, and then after that, pardon me for looking over. I've got a
No,
batch.
by all means.
Um, so then you get a physical edition of the book. It's a 20-page book, so it's a little bit smaller than what you would normally get. But like I said before, the artwork on this issue alone, I feel like is worth it. It's a lot more robust. There's a lot more interesting things going on in the story to capture visually. So yeah, if you haven't dove into the story just yet, you're starting to get at a good point in the story for sure.
Perfection.
Yeah. Now the early bird bundle is still going, and it's still going because it won't die. Um, I've
Okay.
literally tried to kill it like so many times, and for whatever reason, Kickstarter will not take it down. So
Weird.
yeah, I set it to end on a particular date. It did not end, so I had to go back in and manually end it. And when it did, it came back, and it came back, and it came back. So I don't know. I guess I have like a knack for like raising the dead. So the early
Nice.
bird's just here to stay, I guess. So but with the early bird, I will say, if you want to get something really cool, this is the thing to get, because not only do you get everything in the feature bundle, but you're also going to get a free trading card size commission by me,
Oh,
and you get
cool.
it for $4 cheaper. So you get everything that I just described for $4 cheaper. It's again a pretty cool bundle that gets you something that's rather unique with the little trading card commission. And you can get any character that you want. Doesn't matter to me. I try to keep it to just a little, headshot for the commissions, but yeah, it's the reward tier that will not die. So
Um, quick note on that. I recently went to Comic Con here in Toronto and commissioned an artist. So if people are getting trading card size commissions from you, which I hope they do, there are 6 left. 19 people already got them, so act fast, people. Um, I happen to play Magic the Gathering, and I had commissioned an Elf Warrior creature token.
oh nice.
So if we have any black players out there, I don't know, a Confederate zombie token might be in something kind of cool.
Sure.
Anyway, yes, Dave, take it away.
So next one is the digital catch-up sale. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, have no idea what I'm talking about, but really want to get caught up, you can select this option. It's a digital collection of all the Confederate Monster issues up until issue 5, including a issue 0
Oh,
that
cool.
yeah, it's all black and white. It was an issue that was sort of born out of the first Indiegogo campaign that I did. And basically, it's a story that bridges the gap between when they originally reanimated the very first monster, and like sort of
Oh.
chronicles the aftermath of what happens. Because I take some liberties with the original text, the Mary Shelley story. With the Mary Shelley story, there's like a lot of dialogue between the monster and Victor, and making him a bride, and then going on this trip to the Arctic, all that sort of stuff. So with this story, though, I envisioned it as, well, what if when they reanimate the monster, he breaks loose and goes on a rampage through the village, and they have to somehow subdue him. That story is, or issue 0 is basically that story of like what happens when the monster breaks loose, following Victor and
Hmm.
Igor as they track him down, and then sort of setting up the characters on their path to where we meet up with them in issue 1. So issue
Right
0 is basically a self-contained little story, a little short. But like I said, it sort of bridges the gap between the traditional story that we're familiar with and what this story begins with.
I dig it.
Yeah. And then the next one is the physical catch up. So if you want to catch up the story but get the actual physical books, you can choose this option. A little bit more expensive, but printing costs is what they are.
Yep.
Um,
And shipping.
yes, and shipping. We actually had another tier that's all gone for the physical catch up sale, but there were 10 available and only 10, and they were bought up pretty quick.
Nice.
I do the physical catch up sale at like a pretty reduced rate, and basically what I'm doing is I'm selling off my previous stock. So I from my last
Right on.
campaign I believe I had about 10 or 11 left of each issue. So
Oh, okay, yeah.
I just threw it up there at a reduced price because I already have the books, So why should I gouge, readers? Like I don't have to spend money to print those books. So I'll pass along the savings to new readers. So
I dig that. That's cool.
yeah.
But still, so for the current physical catch up, again, I appreciate this is Canadian dollars, people. 64 Canadian dollars, you get 5 full books plus the black and white issue 0.
Mhm.
This is fantastic. And then we have the fun stuff. Um,
Yeah. So like I was saying, I get this tiny commission. So if you just want a commission, you want a copy of the book, this is the option for you. I introduced the tiny commission into this campaign because I was just looking for something to freshen it up a little bit. This campaign is very similar to the last one for good reason, but I think every time I do one of these Kickstarters, I want to bring something new to the table, and so this is one of those new things. And I felt like it was kind of fun to just do these smaller commissions, very quick,
right
kind
on.
of sketchy. They have this sort of like life to them in a way. So yeah, you can get the tiny commission, and then the next tier down is my digital library. So if you really like my work, you like what I've drawn and what I've written, you can get more of my stuff with this digital library. Basically includes everything for Confederate Monster, as well as issue 1s of 2 other series that I've worked on. Vampire Detective in Space that I did with Caleb Palmquist.
God,
Um,
good old Caleb.
oh, I know, he's a good friend of mine. We're actually
Oh,
we're working on a continuation of Vampire Detective in Space right now. It's a noir story, which is kind of out there for this. It's a very different sort of story, a big departure from the main continuation of the Vampire Detective in Space.
huh.
Um, but yeah, we've been doing that. We just finished the Kickstarter campaign a few weeks ago. I literally just finished all the pencils for the entire first issue
Nice.
earlier today. So yeah, we're cruising on that one. And then the other book you can get is Bloodsmith. It's not pictured there; it's in the background there. But Bloodsmith is another horror book that I draw for a Australian creator, Morgan Quaid. And so that book is about like a Victorian type character who has this mysterious like ability to control his blood with his mind. So he can like turn his blood into like useful weapons or like useful things. It's very interesting. It's someone said the other day that it's like Green Lantern, but if Green Lantern uses blood instead, and it's like that's exactly what it is. Um,
That's
so
that's kind of gross, but also like I love it.
yeah, he's just constantly he has like a cane that has a sword inside of it, and he's just constantly like slitting his arm open to like get blood so he can like use it as like a whip or like use it as like a yeah, right there. That's the cover for it. So it's got like this witch that has this little puppet that she speaks through, and like a gunslinger kind of bounty hunter guy. And then there's like a cult that's trying to raise this unholy, Lovecraft kind of monster. So again, if you like horror, I'm pretty sure you'll love that book. It's got a lot of really cool visuals, and the story's really great too. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, and then the last thing you can get in the digital library is a digital collection of my
Oh,
previous book, Feast or Famine, which is a sci-fi story that it tells a alternate dimension of our history where Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein partner together and sort of create the world of tomorrow, and they go on this like space adventure. So it's a very like 50s, sort of retro sci-fi story. But it's all self-contained. So it's the trade collection. It's all three issues together. I think it's like nearly 100 pages. So I mean,
ooh,
in this like library alone, I think there's like 136 pages worth of book or something. I can't even remember. It's probably even more than that now that I think about it. It's probably like 200 now that I think about it.
that is juicy.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff you can get with that one. And then the last tier there is the mini commission. So you basically just get a little bit of a larger commission. It's a 5x7. I picture it there as black and white. The last round I did some colored pencil work.
Oh,
So
cool.
I'm not sure if I'll do black and white or colored pencil. I think maybe I'll even leave it up to the art buyers out there, with the survey, what type of medium you want me to do it in. So
Appreciate that you're open to the medium.
yeah,
Um,
why not?
I will say, one, I appreciate offering the commissions. I appreciate wanting to offer people to be in the book. I think that's like the coolest thing. Um, because I had someone on the show, it was their first Kickstarter, and they were really jazzed about it. They made an alternate cover with their character, and they drew me in beside. It was just at a bus stop. The character was just there, and I was beside him, and I was just like, "This is the coolest thing." So if you can get
Right.
fans out there and draw them in, especially as Confederate zombie, well, undead, um, I think that's just to let them have that. I think is super cool, and to be a part of the project in that way is amazing.
For sure.
Um, so for the folks out there in YouTube land, absolutely. Um, one first comment on the video is from myself. It is just a direct link to this. Hit back your project, and then go ahead and grab whatever it is that you need. If you need all of it, grab it all. If you want Dave's entire library of work, likely 200 odd pages, get in there. Or hey, if you just need issue 5, just grab issue 5 and enjoy it. It's all good. But whatever you do, check it out. Click the campaign, get in there, see what it is, and enjoy it. Um, Dave, we've got about 5 minutes left. So just to start, if someone's made it this far into the video, they're very into what you're doing. Where's the best spot that they can find you?
Sure. So you can find me on pretty much all the socials. My handle is what you see on the screen under my face. It's just Dave Swartz Art on pretty much everything. I just joined in on the Blue Sky and the threads not too long ago. I'm actually finding some pretty good interaction on Reddit subthreads.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, so or subreddits, I should say.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so that's actually been really a good resource for getting the word out. Yeah, so you can find me there. You can find my website at daveswartzart.com, where you can just find all of my collection of illustrations. I probably should pare it down at some point. My illustration gallery is just like a mile and a half long. But if you guys want to go check that out, you can check that out. If you're looking for specific commissions, if you're a comic creator and you want me to do a variant cover for you, you can contact me through my website or through any of my social pages. I do variant covers all the time. So
Nice.
so yeah, I'm very open to hearing what type of collaborations are out there as well. If there's any other creators looking to work with me. But if you're just a fan of my work, you can find me. Again, Dave Swartz Art is where you can get me.
I love it. Then in that case, Dave, I have normally I wrap up my interview by asking, sort of what kind of stuff you're into collecting or what you've been reading. But instead, because you're an educator, um, I think I will ask when it comes to art, comics, drawing. I'll leave that sort of chunk vague, but the artistic end of it, the visual mediums. Um, is there anything that your students taught you unexpectedly that sort of you've carried with you?
Um, well, I would say the first thing that comes to my mind is that I need to always be in a mode of critiquing my own work and not ever just resting on, oh, that's going to be good enough, you know,
Mm,
because I think before I started teaching, I did have a little bit of this mantra of time is money. And so, if I did something, if I felt like it was going to be too much time, effort, or whatever, in order to redo it to improve it, then I probably wouldn't have done it because in my mind, that would have been wasting time, wasting money, and hey, who's going to know? Really
yeah.
like the difference between like this shot and that shot, or this angle or that angle or whatever it may be, or just the level of detail that I'm putting into my work.
Hmm.
Because I've had a lot of times when I turned something in and I didn't think it was all that great, but I had a deadline and this is the best that I could do. And they just go gaga over it. And I think, well, I could have done that better, but you like it. So like, what am I? But
Yeah.
now that I'm a teacher, and I have students that I'm constantly, I mean, I can't even tell you how many like assignments that I have to grade. It's insane. So I'm in this mode of constantly critiquing and looking at the areas of the drawing that can be improved. And
Mm,
so I bring that in my own work now. And obviously, like we said before, I penciled entire pages and got to the end and had scrapped all
yeah.
of it because I critiqued it and I just said, I can do this better. And I think that right there kind of sums up everything. Like if my creative intuition is telling me you could do a better job, instead of ignoring it like I used to do, I don't ignore it anymore and I make it better.
Awesome. I like that. And you know what? I think that is a great thing to leave the interview on. Um, Folks out there, if you're looking for something to inspire you, something to light that fire under your butt, you can always do better. And again, don't be afraid to use references, do research, look stuff up. Just because it didn't come directly and purely from you doesn't mean it's not fantastic, especially if it makes you better. Um, well, then, Dave, on that note, thank you. Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang out with me tonight and talk about Confederate Monster. Once again, people, the link is in the comments. Go check out the book. And I'm just going to see if I can't quickly bring up the cover one last time, just so the nice folks out there can see it.
Well, and as you're doing that, I'll just point out that we are, we're working towards our first stretch goal. We got about a little less than $800 to get to it, and the first stretch goal is pretty cool. It's for the first campaign that I did, I commissioned a very dear friend of mine and fellow former bandmates, because I used to play in a ska band back in the day.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we played in a ska band together in high school, and I went the art route, he went the music route, and so he, is a phenomenal musician. Has a whole music production studio in his apartment,
Whoa.
and so I commissioned him to make me 4 instrumental tracks that would go with the story, and I gave him a couple ideas for titles of songs, and that's all I gave him was, this is what I think the title of the song is going to be. Make me something that fits this title.
Cool.
And he killed it. He knocked it out of the park. I mean, I think all 4 songs are really great companion pieces for the story. They're designed to essentially put on as background music while you're reading the book.
Oh, nice.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be, like you start, issue 1 and track 1 together, and it all kind of flows. It's a dealer's choice. Whatever song you want to listen to while you're reading the book, it all works, I feel.
Yeah, it's to sort of set the mood, the vibe.
Right.
I
And
dig that.
yeah, and so if we hit the $4,000 stretch goal, that will become available for everybody, including our digital backers, because after all, it is a digital reward. So, so yeah, that's what we're working on right now. I'm hopeful that we can hit it, because I really enjoy his work. I think he did it, like I said, a phenomenal job. I think it just fits the story really, really well. And then the next stretch goal after that is, just to be able to get everybody who's a physical backer, and this one's actually pretty interesting. It's probably going to take me a while to figure out exactly how I'm going to execute it. But I did, for one of the previous campaigns, a copy of a page from Victor Frankenstein's personal journal.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Okay, that's cool.
yeah, so what I did is, I went to my local thrift store. Well, not just one. I went to several, and they often have just giant bins of old books.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought a bunch of old books, and I mean each book is like 25 cents or something like that.
Yeah.
It's super cheap. So I bought a bunch of old books, and inside of all the old books, at the front and at the back, are typically blank pages.
Yeah.
And they're old and worn and yellowed. So I used an X-Acto blade, and I meticulously cut them out. And then I feed them through my printer, and just print out a little design of a journal entry page that I made.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. I just stick it inside of the comic book sleeve, because they're only about the size of a comic book, maybe a little smaller. But it depends on how many people we actually attract in our backer count, how much of a headache I'm going to have to go through if we actually hit that $5,000 mark. But if we do, I mean, I'm totally down. Let's do it.
That would be amazing, and it's also super cool, and it's just another way to draw people in and to make them a part of that world. Um, Kudos on that one as well, Dave.
Thanks.
I like the way you're thinking. Like I was saying, absolutely, Dave. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show tonight for me. And yeah, I wish you all the best on the campaign.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to the next chat.
Absolutely. And for the folks out there in YouTube land, whether, like I said earlier, you're with us live now or watching this sometime in the next 13 days, click the link in the comments, go back to the campaign, get all the books, and if nothing else, we will see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day, yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Nah, collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries. You need answers. When did Batman become